Some California public schools are falling apart at the seams,
What you're seeing is dry rot.
but the fixes are not cheap.
A lot of our schools are dilapidated.
Today, we're talking about Prop 2 and its $10 billion price tag,
Every classroom costs about $1 million.
and asking, should it be up to voters to foot the bill?
What we need is a better system for allocating the money.
This is CBS News Bay Area with Elizabeth Cook.
I'm Anne Makovec in for Liz. There is just 1 week until Election Day, and today we're taking a deep dive into a ballot measure to fund California schools, Prop 2. And while most people can agree that kids should have a comfortable learning environment, taxpayer advocates are sick of state politicians pushing their bad budgeting onto voters to help fix. So what is the solution here? All right, our countdown continues. And if you want your ballot to arrive by Election Day, obviously, the Postal Service says you should try to get it in the mail today. For your vote to count, the ballot needs to be postmarked by November 5th. Or, of course, you can vote in person or drop off your ballot the day of in one of those ballot boxes. Now, one of the key issues on California's ballot is Proposition 2. That is a bond measure that would pay for $10 billion in school upgrades, public schools. Supporters say it would be money well spent. But opponents told our Kenny Choi that the state doesn't need to be saddled with more debt.
Ongoing construction at West Portal Elementary in San Francisco will replace rows of portable classrooms into a state-of-the-art facility.
A lot of students were in temporary classrooms that were decades old.
Emily Harris is a teacher who has seen the challenges students and faculty face daily.
When students are in those kind of learning environments, they don't have enough space for their own physical bodies.
SFUSD parent Satinder Dillon has two children who have attended classes inside what they call portables. He's voting yes on Prop 2 to upgrade more schools across the state.
When you see nice facilities, it does make you feel better and more comfortable about going to that school.
But opponents say wealthier districts have an advantage over underserved communities since local districts are required to match funds to secure state school bond money. Susan Shelley is with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, which opposes Prop 2.
A better way to do it would be in the budget, prioritizing the school districts that don't have the resources for local bonds, that don't have the big tax base that other districts might have.
Instead of asking taxpayers to approve another bond and borrowing more, Shelley believes the state should address these school repair needs when there are budget surpluses.
Everything in Prop 2 could have been paid for at that time if the legislature had prioritized the safety and well-being of students, but they didn't. So they're coming to the voters for debt and for local property tax increases under Prop 2, and we just don't think that's a good deal.
Right now, there are about 10,000 public schools statewide, including about 1,300 charter schools. According to the Public Policy Institute of California, 38% of students attend schools that don't meet the state's minimum safety standards. Unlike many other states, California does not have a permanent funding stream for school repairs. Money comes entirely from state and local bonds. Kate Levitt is with SFUSD's bond program.
Combined with the local bond measures, the state funding kind of really maximizes what public schools are able to do and how they're able to maintain aging facilities.
In 2020, voters rejected the state's last school facilities bond, a $15 billion proposal, leaving the state's school repair account nearly empty. Teachers and parents are pushing for a different outcome.
It's the calculus for a lot of parents in San Francisco regarding the school district and whether we have enough funding. So to see more funding go in, is I think it's a good thing.
Renovating the school and by bringing in new resources, it just really helps our overall student body to have the access they need.
For teachers like Harris, who supports the measure, approving local and state bonds for schools is paramount.
So if Prop 2 does pass, would richer schools really be the ones that benefit? And if it doesn't pass, how should we pay to fix our schools? Coming up, we're going to hear directly from both sides of this debate. Okay, so $10 billion is obviously a lot of money. Supporters of Prop 2 say it would be money well spent if that goes towards our schools. But not everybody thinks taxpayers should be on the hook to pay for yet another bond measure. Joining me now is one of the opponents of the proposition, State Assemblyman Bill Asaley. Thanks for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
So why should voters say no to Prop 2?
Yeah, look, the state is in a fiscal crisis. We had a $70 billion deficit last year. I suspect we're going to have a massive deficit again this following year. And really, a budget is a reflection of our priorities. My position on this is not that schools don't need the money, it's that the money that the state has been totally misspent and squandered. We had a $300 billion budget last year, and they should have prioritized schools in that budget. Instead, they invested in things that I think most Californians don't support, such as this high-speed train to nowhere. And in this budget, we're spending $5 billion to fund healthcare for illegal immigrants in the state of California. $5 billion.
So if it's the legislature that is making the mistakes when it comes to the budget, should it be the school kids that are paying the price with bad facilities?
Well, look, when it comes to our children, I think what's important is the quality of the education. The buildings are important too, but we have one of the worst school systems in the country. And I'm sorry, but I don't think building a nice auditorium or a better football field is going to improve the performance of the students at school. We need to fix the problem. Half of our budget goes to the education system in California. We don't have a financial issue when it comes to schools. We have a management and a policy issue when it comes to our education system.
Now, what about those who say it ends up being a sort of case of like haves and have-nots, because people who have a bunch of money can send their kids to a private school, okay, no problem, but the people who don't are stuck with whatever the public schools are?
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people like me champion for school choice. I think it's really important that taxpayers are empowered to make the best decision for their children. So a person like me, I believe that the amount of money attached to each child, that tens of thousands of dollars, is sent as a form of a check to parents, and they decide whether they want to send their child to a public school nearby or if they want to give it to a private school. So you empower the parents to make the decisions, and the market and competition has a way of really improving everything for everyone. And so that would be our solution to that issue.
Okay, so we still need to eventually appropriate money, obviously, for education in California. So if we need, a more long-term funding plan here, how should the state go about that? Where to even begin?
Well, look, I think, like I said, we have a massive management problem in the state of California. We have a supermajority legislature that's controlled by one party, the Democrat Party. They're often controlled by special interest and unions, including the California Teachers Association, which cares about their members, not necessarily your students. So my position on this is we got to balance power in Sacramento. We got to and then bring up ideas, and let's have a real debate on how we solve these issues. I don't think that spending another $10 billion is going to solve our issues. I'm sorry.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to say about this measure to convince voters to say no?
Well, look, this is not free money. This is debt. They're asking you to take out $10 billion, and by the time we repay it, it will be $20 billion. And if we don't have money to pay our debts in the legislature, that means they're going to have to raise your taxes. So it may not raise your taxes today, but they will have to repay this money one way or another.
All right, Assemblyman Bill Asaley, really appreciate your perspective on that. In the meantime, of course, supporters of Prop 2 say that the need for money in our schools is urgent. I spoke with the superintendent of the San Lorenzo Unified School District earlier this afternoon. So, Superintendent, we have heard about schools that have mold, leaking roofs. My first question is, how did schools get in such bad shape that we need Prop 2?
That's a really good question, Anne. The truth of the matter is that our California system for funding schools is inadequate. School sites have far greater needs than the dollars that are provided in order to take care of those capital outlay projects. So Prop 2 is intended to help make progress on some of those needs that school districts have. However, it's insufficient. So it's necessary, but insufficient. And when you look at the totality of needs that school districts have.
So this is mainly about infrastructure, just the school buildings themselves.
Yeah, Prop 2 is intended to support the infrastructure of the school facilities across K through 14 systems. Of course, $8.5 billion will go toward K through 12, and then $1.5 billion are dedicated for the community college system, which also has needs. And it's not just that the state is contributing to those capital outlay projects, but it's actually a partnership between the state and local districts. So I think of it as sort of an even split, even though technically, if it's a modernization project, it's closer to a 60-40 split where the state picks up 60% of the cost and the locals have to pick up 40% of the cost. That's why we're one of 5 districts in the Bay Area that have a measure on this particular same election. And then I think one district has a parcel tax as well.
So that is one of the arguments against Prop 2, at least how it's written. There's concern that maybe some poorer, maybe some rural school districts won't be able to get the matching funds, and that then they would be left out of the state funds.
Yeah, it's a great argument. The solution, however, is not to not pass Proposition 2. That just means that fewer dollars are available. The state, there's far greater, even with Prop 2 passing, there are more needs than Prop 2 would be able to supply. You probably have heard that of the $10 billion that would go to school districts if Prop 2 passes, about $4 billion of that is already accounted for. The way the system is set up, there's a list of districts that have submitted projects to be funded by the state or partially funded by the state. And after the bond passed in 2016, I think was the last one, all those dollars have been already taken up. That was about a $9 billion bond. All those dollars have been taken up, and now there are an additional $4 billion that are on the list of projects that are approved but unfunded.
And I think that's one of the arguments against it as well when it comes to, why is the solution here to pass more bonds? Shouldn't the legislature, shouldn't the governor just be finding more money in the budget that we have to fund these projects?
Yeah, that sounds good. Although we're all coming off a budget deficit last year where especially outside of education, a number of other industries had to take a lot of cuts in order just to pass the budget. There was a budget shortfall last year. So I don't want to tell the legislature how to do their job. And of course, I would love to prioritize funding for schools for everything. But the math is just such that means that something else has to go.
And we don't have much time left, but I do want to ask really quickly, voters in 2020 rejected Prop 13, similar bond measure. How is this different?
Well, one is less. That was a $15 billion bond issue. So this is a $10 billion bond issue. That's the major difference. Of course, Prop 13 was probably an unlucky number that we got for in 2020 or 22. It was 2020 when that was rejected by the voters. And the need is still there. So we're really hopeful. The polling results are saying that it has a shot. Obviously, the latest KPIX poll was saying that it's likely to pass. However, we know that it's up to the California voters, and my only hope is that the voters will decide to invest in our schools. The solution is not fewer dollars into schools. All the students need to have a safe place where they can learn and a comfortable place. Lastly, in San Lorenzo, I being one that grew up in the Bay Area, I know that climate change has impacted our schools. It's hot. And schools need to have air conditioning now that was different than when I was growing up. And then if you're not a fan of air conditioning because of the heat, I would say too, the smoke days. We're having conversations often about what happens when the smoke from a fire in Canada comes to the Bay Area, and now we have to make a decision whether or not we're going to have kids in our buildings. We need to have schools that have HVAC systems that will filter out that smoke so kids can come learn in a safe, comfortable learning environment.
Superintendent Darrell Camp with the San Lorenzo Unified School District. Thanks so much. All right, giving voters a lot to think about as we are 1 week away from Election Day 2024. Really hard to believe. It is moving quickly, and CBS News Bay Area is on top of all of these very tight races. We are your election headquarters, and we're going to have live results coming in on election night on air, as well as our website, KPIX.com, and streaming on the free CBS News app live all night. Thanks for watching. You can always get all the latest headlines and weather over on PIX Plus. And remember to like and click the button on the bottom left of your screen to subscribe for the biggest Bay Area news.